Guys, Amanda here, your literacy coach, Birth to Five. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about guidance and discipline of your young kiddos. When we think about guidance and discipline as parents, we usually think about two or three things: spanking, timeout, and removing privileges. And while those all can have their place, I wanted to talk to you about an alternative to those, and that's called the waiting chair. When you look up discipline in the dictionary, it says discipline is a way of training. So, training someone in the way they should go. So, if you're disciplining yourself to run a marathon, you're going to practice running, right? You're going to do the things that a runner needs to do to win the marathon. Parents, we are called to discipline our children, but that's not to punish our children, it's to train them up in how we think they should behave. And so when you think about discipline and guidance in your home, I want you to think about that definition, because while punishments have a purpose, if you do something wrong, then sometimes you do have to receive a punishment for it. And timeout is a great way to do that. Kids hate being bored. They hate having to sit there and not do that fun activity. But it does not teach them anything. It's just the punishment. So in order to teach them what we expect and to teach them to make better choices, I use the waiting chair. I do it at home and at school. And it looks an awful lot like a timeout chair, but it has a bigger purpose. And so it might look something like this. Let's say I have a child named Jesse, and he knows the rules. He knows he's not supposed to throw blocks, and he has thrown a block. So I might say, Jesse, I need for you to sit in the waiting chair. And in a few minutes, we're going to come and have a conversation about this, because you know that it's not okay to throw blocks. So I've done a couple things there. One, I've reminded him of the rules and reminded him that I know he knows the rule about blocks or whatever the situation is. And I've told him what I expect. He's going to sit in that waiting chair until I come to talk to him. And while he's there, he's supposed to be thinking about what he did wrong. As a kid myself, I don't ever remember having a privilege removed or being spanked, but I always remembered these huge, big conversations. In fact, I used to beg my parents, just spank me and get it over with, but they wouldn't. We had to have this big conversation. And it was very, very effective in helping me make better choices, because I didn't want to put up with a 45-minute conversation about why I stole a Kit Kat. So not that that ever happened. So when you send them to the waiting chair, one, sometimes it gives you a chance to cool off so that you can respond in a more grown-up way, because sometimes we do get emotional about the behaviors our children exhibit, and it gives your kids some time to think. So while they're sitting in the waiting chair, just a couple of minutes, a good rule of thumb is however minutes old they are, that's a good number of minutes. So a 3-year-old would only sit by themselves for 2 or 3 minutes. And then you go over to them and get down on their level and have a conversation about what their behavior was, why it was unacceptable, and what a better choice was. And the reason that doing this is so effective is a couple of things. One, sometimes we think that we've explained a situation when we haven't. We tell our kids, oh, behave. Well, what does that mean? Sometimes we tell them, you need to use your words. Well, I could use some choice words, but it's not what you want me to use, Mom. So by having this conversation, by having this conversation, you know, and you might have to have the same conversation many times, and that's okay, but you know that you've explained yourself really well. Why was this behavior a problem for you? Was it dangerous? Was it destructive? Was it rude? Was it, what was going on? And then exactly what you expect them to do in the future if that situation arrives. Kids hate wasting their time. They don't like sitting still. They don't like being stuck in that chair. And so that gives them some time to think and a behavior that they want to avoid. They don't want to do that again. And so having that conversation. One thing that I've learned from my husband is that those conversations can be pretty grown up, can be pretty advanced. When you're speaking to a 2-year-old, you don't have to use baby language. They are a big kid. We want them to grow into a big kid, and we need to use those big grown-up words and vocabulary. So when we have that conversation, it's going to be short with a 1 or 2 year old, certainly. But if you have a 2-year-old sitting in the chair for throwing a block, you might say, throwing blocks is dangerous. What if that block had hit me or hit your brother? And they would have hurt. And we don't want our siblings or to hurt, do we? The conversation can be short. But as they get older, that conversation is going to be longer about how we want to treat people and how we want people to treat us and what are the consequences, the short-term consequences of that behavior and the long-term consequences of that behavior. Kids need to know that if they start throwing things all the time, then they won't be allowed to go to the block center. Or if you're going to throw blocks every time we get the blocks out from your room, then I won't get the blocks out anymore. That is a consequence of your behavior. That's what you're teaching me. We've talked about that before, what your kids are teaching you. So having them sit in that waiting chair, calm down, calm yourself down, have them calm down. Sometimes you need to do some of those breathing strategies with your kids to help them calm down that we've talked about. And have that conversation. Have a very grown-up conversation and explain yourself and allow them to explain themselves if they're old enough to do that. So I hope that you try the waiting chair. It can be very effective, and I hope that it helps some squabbles at your house. Thanks, guys. See you next time.